If you're wondering, no, I have not played this game before.
Well, no surprise there. Before you begin, I should...
However, I did play the original Space Quest and it's a bit unnerving as to how similar it is to the second game. The text insert interface, the EGA graphics, also improved quite substantially, feel largely familiar. Not only that, the entire story feels like a rehash of the previous one. You begin at a space station when something very perilous and very unexpected sets the plot in motion, with you ending up stranded on a hostile alien planet. You then have to make your way through it by defeating predators, befriending locals, and generally being lucky. Getting a spaceship, you travel to the bad guy's station, meander about it for a while until it explodes, preferably without you in it. The endings though are quite different, but still you'd have to be blind not to see the Force Awakens situation here. We are dealing with exactly the same story.
So it's the same game.
Well, I wouldn't be so quick to judge.
It's sort of concerning, but still, we've played the original for the gameplay, so how does the sequel hold up to it in that regard?
So remember how the original didn't just present you with good text insert puzzles, but framed the entire game around them in order to make them feel more rewarding? Well, there is none of that in Space Quest 2. The original, for example, foreshadowed future rooms, thus making you feel the momentum of your journey when you get to them, and this game doesn't do that. There is only one instance of foreshadowing in the entire game, yet aside from that, a room is just a room here. There is no was and will be in Space Quest 2. It is indeed what the original was so carefully avoiding, one continuous, never-ending now. The original structures the game around 4 distinct parts, with transitions between them being as grandiose as to make it clear that you are indeed making substantial progress. Instead of 3 such gratifying moments, there is now only 1. The original had a matter-of-fact tone to the writing, as well as a world that seemed completely uncaring for the protagonist, making his struggle against a faceless empire feel even more improbable than the cruel gameplay would like you to believe, and so on. The story reflected the challenge of the game. Sarians were ambiguous. They obviously had an organization and a hierarchy with a leader at the top, but you never saw or learned anything about him. They were a menace too big for the protagonist to comprehend. The only reason Vilka managed to thwart their plan was because he is too insignificant a target to be paying any attention to. Not when their aim was to destroy the capital planet of Xenon and take over the Federation. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, Space Quest 2 not only shows you the villain right of the bat, but want to know the master plan of his? He wants to send genetically engineered salesmen to Xenon with the purpose of, presumably, annoying them to death. Maybe suffering through those puzzles isn't even worth it this time around.
Basically, nothing in this game, well, aside from the score, highlights your gameplay achievements like it did in the original.
George, establishing a clear villain with a grudge against the protagonist makes the story feel personal and relatable. It's actually considered to be good storytelling, you know.
Yeah, I agree, and it's actually something I do like here, just not for the same reason as the original. But you've gotta admit, Sarians were appropriate for a game such as this.
About that, you've said that this game and the first one are the same, but I would like to point out that...
However, this downgrade relates exclusively to the periphery of puzzles. What wasn't downgraded was the quality of the puzzles themselves. They are still as phenomenal as before. They utilize the text insert sensibility to its absolute fullest. Nothing is ever solved by typing the words "use here," except once. And the actual words you do implement are varying quite significantly from puzzle to puzzle. You have to untie a creature to free him. You have to throw a stone to distract the guard. You have to blow a whistle to summon a beast. Furthermore, puzzles require rather interesting solutions, all of which are either hinted at or intuitive on their own.
I should probably give some examples, but honestly, I would rather not ruin any of them.
I've changed my mind. I will now ruin all of them. I've realized that in my original script I had seriously undersold just how unreasonably good the puzzles are in this game. Considering that Space Quest 2 is, from what I've heard, a black sheep of the series, I see it as my duty to speak up for what is rightfully excellent. Skip to this time mark to avoid spoilers. As I've said many times over the years, the strength of a text-insert adventure game is in utilizing all the verbs of the English vocabulary as a possible action you might have to enact. There is no concise list of 2 to 3 verbs that set the boundaries for your possible actions. Every action is possible. This infinitely enlarges the list of possible puzzle solutions and forces you to implement your actual problem-solving skills, rather than the ability to guess the correct action. Now, the funny thing is that I had thought that the ambiguous choice of a verb was the extent of the puzzle-solving complexity of those games. That was until I've played Space Quest 2. Let's just look at an example of a puzzle that a number of people seem to have trouble with. There is a swamp with a monster that eats you when you try to cross it. So the question is, how do you get past it? I mean, seriously, how on earth do you solve this puzzle? Like, how? Oh, you just do the same thing you saw local do, which is rubbing foul-smelling berries onto yourself. Now, how would you recreate this puzzle with a point-and-click interface? Well, you click on the berries, drag them over your sprite and then click again. You do realize that this could imply a million possible actions. Do you want to eat the berries? You want to put them in your pockets? You want to hold them in your hands? You want to hold them in your mouth but without swallowing it? It could be any number of those, but the moment you click on your sprite, the game will choose the correct action for you, thus negating the possibility of a wrong choice. The game solves the puzzle for you, but okay, what if you have to specify the action from a list of words? But you realize that the moment I see the word rub, I now know that I will have to use it at some point. Throughout the game, I will always think about whether or not rubbing could solve a problem at hand. It's a dead giveaway. While a word that isn't on there, like a curious absence of a push or a pull command, will make me certain that I'll never have to use them, so they are just completely gone from my problem solving. No matter how you design it, the point-and-click interface will never have the same degree of intelligent puzzle solving that a text-insert game could have, and which Space Quest 2 does have. So, okay, even if it means making some compromises, we can rework this puzzle with the point-and-click UI. But tell me, how would you rework a puzzle where you have to figure out to dive into the one non-shallow spot of the swamp? Do you click on it? Do you press the dive command? You have to actually figure out that, hey, if it's deep enough for me to swim in it, shouldn't I be able to dive in there? That's the puzzle, you know? You have to apply common sense to that situation in order to solve it. But if I just click on it, I might accidentally solve it. And even worse, if dive is one of the options on the UI, of course I'll try it. The game is practically showing me the solution. But okay, even if it means butchering it, you can feasibly fit this puzzle into a point and click. But this is not the whole puzzle. Once you dive in, you quickly run out of air before you can reach your destination. So, due to common sense logic and a hint within the flavor text, you type, hold your breath. This you literally cannot recreate in any shape or form in a point-click interface. Yet this is exactly what makes this puzzle solving satisfying. It's not moon logic, it's not even unhinted at, yet due to a text parser, this simple action becomes a puzzle. The more user-friendly the UI is, the more cryptic the puzzles have to be to accommodate it. Space Quest 2's puzzles, on the other hand, are not cryptic at all. You just have to actually think through them, with the key phrase being "have to." There are multi-step puzzle situations that become incredibly engaging and immersive due to that excellent use of the text parser. For instance, you have to place a roll of toilet paper in a basket and then light it on fire to get past the security bot. Or look at an even better example. After you get caught in a trap, you attempt to free yourself. Nothing works. After a while, blood rushes to your head, causing you to pass out. Once you come to, you find yourself in a cage near an alien hunter with a suspicious fireplace prepared on a hot summer day. What could help you survive here? Glancing at your inventory, you see a spore that, as you've learned through your own experience, causes paralysis to all that stand near it when it breaks. You throw it and, yes, the beast falls unconscious. But the cage is still locked, so the beast wakes up and fries your ass. Once you reload, you think, what would be the logical improvement for the escape plan? What do you need to escape? A key. Where would the key be? In the hunter's pockets, most likely. How would you get to them? Well, if he was closer when he fell unconscious, you'd be able to search through his pockets. How do you get him closer? Well, getting his attention might be a good start. So you yell. Do you see how freaking logical this whole train of thought is? Can you imagine how gripped I was during this whole sequence? It's not a simple matter of just running away or even pushing the beast into fire. No, the multi-step layout of the puzzle is what allows it to develop into a story, with you, the player, as the protagonist. It's astonishing puzzle design. But when I thought that the puzzles couldn't get any better, they did. Once you enter a peaceful village of the locals, their leader says that they are willing to open the passage whenever you want. You just have to say the word. What word? And that is when this game started playing around with the whole concept of a text parser. What does it matter what word you have to say? You just have to command the protagonist to, indeed, say the word. It's like tour de force of a puzzle. How on earth would you recreate it in a point-and-click UI without completely killing its clever, unconventional, yet still quite reachable solution? You can't. I mean, you might find this puzzle to be a bit bullshit, like how were you supposed to know to use the text parser that way? But that is what a puzzle is. The solution is not as simple as type in the word that you've heard. It's something that requires you to actually think outside the box, like an actual riddle. The game even frames this puzzle in a way that would guide you to the solution. You are in a secluded two-room habitat of those aliens with no way out, and the solution is established to be the word, spoken and understood within the context of this scene. Possible solutions are narrowed down to just those couple rooms. Furthermore, there is no dialogue mechanics in Space Quest 2. You can't specify or directly control what Wilco will say. You can just order him to talk. And remember, the gameplay has already established Wilco as not merely the subject, but also the object of puzzle solving. Coming to the conclusion of using him as a key is not an impossibility in the player's mind. Immediately after this, the game introduces another brilliant puzzle. You find yourself in darkness, with your hands occupied. You have to find a source of illumination before proceeding. So what do? You put the gem in your mouth. This is a puzzle I've been stuck on for actual hours, but as soon as I figured it out, I felt elated. I can't even remember when another video game made me this happy from a solitary gameplay moment. But still, how on earth does the game expect anyone to guess that solution? You see, since you have already used the glowing gem to illuminate another cave, and the game established self as a possible application of an item, the game has subtly led you to attempt to put the item in Vilka's mouth, which is a puzzle that would be near unsolvable if the game had not planted those two mimetic markers previously in the game. The gem is obviously the item you need to use here, and since self is an option and the hands are occupied, it's merely common sense to put the source of light in your mouth. There is a trend within this game of establishing a mimetic marker through earlier puzzles so that it could later be used in a more demanding or tricky way. Getting the attention of the hunter was obvious, but getting the robot to follow you is something you do because you already have a notion of getting attention can be used to solve puzzles from this recent experience. Hell, you could have left the Vohaul's room without aborting his master plan if this game hadn't established that searching corpses is a necessary action. And even at the start, coming from the first space quest, of course you would search those corpses and find the keycard without which you would get stuck later. And if you don't, well, notice how the guard on the tower looks exactly like the one you got the keycard from. If that mimetic hint isn't enough, notice that contextually it makes sense that a different soldier from the same outfit would have the keycard for the landing platform from which he flew. I simply can't stress just how much I adore the puzzles here. Space Quest 2 not merely uses the sensibility of a text parser, but fully realizes its potential by designing logical, multi-step puzzle situations that require a diverse number of verbs in order to navigate them. The puzzles can get tricky, but the game provides a plethora of often subliminal clues in order to hint at the solution without giving it away, which would ruin the satisfaction of solving it, obviously. And that's not even taking into account the clever, unconventional implementation of a text parser that puts Space Quest 2 in a whole another league. So, essentially, this game reaches the apex of what puzzles in an adventure game can be. Now, we get back to the non-spoiler part.
So yeah, the puzzle solving is good, but it's a bit easier than the original.
Also, I should mention that while the first game relied on common sense, more or less, this game is a lot more silly in that regard. You should try to think more in terms of cartoon logic, like you are a character in Looney Tunes, if that makes sense. Just compare those two situations. There was a beast you had to kill in the original as part of the alien trial. You had a combat knife, but that surely wouldn't do it. Isn't that right, Roberta Williams?
I'm not worthy! I'm not worthy!
Is that right, Roberta?
I'm not worthy! Wait, what?
However, you had a futuristic device, a bottle of compressed water. I know, just roll with it. Throw it at the creature's gaping mouth. Without knowing any better, it swallows the bottle, yet the never-ending stream of water keeps pouring out of the crack and inside the beast's stomach. In a short while, it bursts from the inside out. Now, how do you overcome a monster in the second game? You throw a Rubik's Cube at it. The horror! Thank God we didn't throw Ultima at him. This is probably the worst puzzle in the game, by the way. Every other one is a bit more solvable than that. But still, it highlights the principle of cartoony logic I was describing rather well. I should also mention that I didn't really solve it like this. I just walked off screen like I would in King's Quest and glitch the monster out of existence. I actually thought this was the intended solution, since doesn't it make sense to run away from a Tasmanian devil when you see one? So yeah, this game is easier than the original. It's not by much, but still I managed to beat this game on my own, and I couldn't the original. By default, that lessens the prideful satisfaction of completing this game, which, in addition to how the game already dropped the gameplay-focused design of the original, raises the question of why should you even play this game?
Because it's different. It's a different game from the original.
What do you mean?
The original was a gameplay exercise. It presented a challenge while framing it accordingly. Space Quest 2 is a more balanced experience than that of the first game, in which the presentation, story and writing were basically foil for the gameplay. Here, they work alongside gameplay for the sake of entertaining the player on their own, rather than to make the puzzles feel more rewarding.
You know, Seal? That's absolutely true. Why haven't you said that before?
I was trying to.
So yeah, the biggest departure of Space Quest 2 from the original is the shift in tone. It's a lot more cartoony. While the original kept a straight face around 80% of the time, this game is laughing all the way through. It's still a gameplay-focused experience with great puzzle solving, but it's also a game with a distinct personality, which is filled with flavor text that is actually flavorful. You could say that with this title, Space Quest took a definitive step away from the King's Quest mentality and towards Leisure Suit Larry, which is even advertised at some point here. Adventure games really liked this chilling out business, didn't they? You type in the look around command not just for the sake of getting clues for puzzles, but also because you are interested in your environments and want to actually read the entertaining writing the developers had conjured up.
So you're saying the writing has improved?
Yeah, I do. It's like the first one was very matter-of-fact in its writing, but this one has a heart.
Although it never gets more than merely entertaining. Larry was straight up hilarious, and this game in comparison is quite unfunny. I don't think I ever laughed during my playthrough. In fact, I spotted several examples of just flat out poor writing, but, and this may be a bit provocative, I don't think a game like this really has to be funny. It creates a humorous, light-hearted tone that paints the experience in a specific way, and that is enough. If the rest of the game is engaging, of course. But yeah, it does help when a comedy game is actually funny though. Just not this time.
But still, Space Quest 2 does have a clear identity now. When playing this game, you feel like you are surviving in a jungle on an alien planet, but during Space Quest 1 it felt like, well, like you were playing a game.
As you might recall, Seal used the word balanced to describe this game. It does not only apply to the way the game was written, but also drawn. I mean, just look at those screens. That's EGA at its finest as far as I'm concerned, and it's miles ahead of what we saw in Space Quest 1, which gave us an outline of a world. It gave us just enough to sustain the look of a sci-fi adventure. But this world never really felt like a world. Atmospherically, I mean. It's exactly like Prince of Persia in that regard. It used Cliff Note version of Arabian folklore to establish its setting, but relied more on the player's knowledge of the folklore and his ability to fill the gaps with this knowledge, as well as a fair bit of imagination. In Space Quest 1, presentation, like story, was just context. It's simply more enjoyable to tackle those puzzles when the setting establishes a hostile desert planet and a story is telling you of how without your actions an entire world will die. It just reinforces the gameplay basically. You have to project your idea of what a science fiction adventure should be onto Space Quest in order for its atmosphere to function, and that is why Space Quest 2 is such a step forward from the first one. You don't have to project anything to experience this atmosphere. You just feel it. Just to be fair, the space station segment in the first game was better. Not in terms of gameplay, but you see, it just felt like an actual functioning station. There were guards everywhere, they were doing laundry, getting their weapons from an armory, and the station itself was running on a generator you actually used to blow the station up. It felt alive, but here it's a bit empty. It's not bad, and it does get a lot better once you descend those stairs, but yeah, I thought I should mention that. But hold on, what the hell, George? Atmospheric AGA graphics? Just look at them. Well, yeah, exactly. Look at them. They are not displeasing. In fact, I would say they look cool. To my mind, whether or not a game looks good has absolutely nothing to do with its technological fidelity. EGA graphics like pixel art or cel shading is a style as far as I'm concerned. A style born out of a technological limitation carrying with it a unique aesthetic and artistic value. A modern game doesn't look better than an EGA one, and a text adventure doesn't look better than the new Assassin's Creed. They just look different, that's all. Different, like an impressionist or minimalist painting compared to baroque or realistic imagery. They tackle different looks, so to me, a game like Space Quest 2 or Quest for Glory 2 look incredible. They look unlike anything that humanity ever produced, and that's why they are special and artistically interesting. There is potential within this aesthetic, a potential that was only utilized by later games, akin to Trial by Fire, a game that is unimaginable without EGA graphics, since by updating it, you would destroy the dreamlike atmosphere of its intended experience.
And then there's this. And then there's this, yes.
Yeah, doesn't mean we can't criticize them though. Space Quest 2 looks distinctly more detailed and sophisticated than the original, and the first one was better looking than King's Quest, which was an atmospheric equivalent of a vacuum.
What the hell?
Sorry, what did you say about King's Quest?
Wait, aren't you the adventure game geek? Dude, I love your stuff, man. Your videos are awesome.
Yeah. Don't try and sweet talk me. For far too long have I tolerated your disrespect for one of the greatest adventure game series of all time. Now take back what you just said about King's Quest. Or else.
Nah, man. It sucks.
Sorry, what did you just say?
Well, what can I say? I just didn't like the game.
That's no excuse for blasphemy. How dare you say such things about a timeless classic?
I mean...
Don't look at me, George. I'm with him on this.
So, what will it be? Will you renounce your heretical ways?
I mean... Look! A three-headed monkey!
Ha! You think I'm gonna fall for that trick?
Phew.
Oh, classy, George. How mature of you to do that.
So anyway, I should probably mention that making pretty pictures isn't all that goes into making an atmospheric game. All the locations within a game should feel distinctly like parts of the same world. There is a unified color scheme used on the planet of Space Quest 2 and a different one on a space station, signifying them as different places. For example, it wouldn't make sense to walk left in the forest and appear in a dirty restroom, but it does on a space station. It's a primitive example, but it highlights the principle. A selection of imagery, whether good looking or not, does not carry atmosphere with it by default. It's the correlation between them that makes a series of rooms feel like a forest on an alien planet or an ancient Arabian city in the desert. It doesn't even have to be visuals or music that unites the atmosphere. Remember Wizardry 7? Even though I wouldn't call its presentation great, as soon as you read those sad, world-weary passages that narrate your environments, it all clicks together. You start to perceive the game from a different, melancholic perspective and realize that you are viewing an accurate representation of this world's deranged soul. Or the opposite. Monkey Island had incredible visuals and one of the best scores to any adventure game, but it all felt shallow because of the fourth wall breaking writing. The game undermined its potential atmosphere for the sake of comedy.
You might be sad that this game isn't as obsessed with gameplay as the first one was, but we already have Space Quest 1. Why would you want the same game again instead of something different?
It is still a gameplay-focused experience with brilliant puzzles, it's just not as fixated on them as before. Let's face it, the only reason you'd play this game today would be because you've already finished the first one. You've already got your definitive text adventure, you've conquered it. Which is exactly why Space Quest 2 does exactly what a sequel to the original should. It lessens the challenge, but ups the personality. It remains difficult and gameplay focused, thus appealing to a fan of the original, but evolves along with him. It's more atmospheric, has more interesting text prompts, a more personal and entertaining story, and it doesn't take itself seriously anymore.
Space Quest 2 is well-rounded. It engages you with both its comedic atmosphere and difficult gameplay. And that's actually something I don't really get.
Space Quest 2 is tongue-in-cheek, while the original was earnest in its attempt at a science fiction adventure. In fact, when thinking about it, doesn't it make more sense to go with a serious route for this type of game? Both Space Quests are gameplay-driven. The reason you'd play them is because you'd want a challenging, text-insert puzzle-solving gameplay, with the key word being challenging. It takes effort to beat them without an FAQ, and it gives you pride to know that you've beaten a game that not a whole lot of players could finish on their own. I mean, they not only kill you at every opportunity, but you can actually get stuck without an ability to continue the game. Doesn't it feel natural to accompany gameplay like this with a serious story that reflects that difficulty? To give it a somewhat serious, down-to-earth and gritty tone, you'd reinforce the difficult gameplay by giving it appropriate context. That is why the original makes sense to me. It's logical, self-evident and perfect in its conception. And that is why I don't get why I like Space Quest 2 more. If you're making a light-hearted, cartoony comedy game, why would you make it this impenetrably difficult? Does it really make sense to you to expect that a player who has to replay the game for the third time because he forgot to pick up a glass cutter or something will laugh at a silly kid-friendly joke? Furthermore, light-hearted tone deflates the stakes of a narrative, so why would you downgrade the satisfaction of victory in a game all about the satisfaction of victory? Why make a comedy game difficult?
So, which of the two games do you think is the best one?
The first one, but not for the reason you are describing.
How do you mean?
George, the way you put it, the entire genre of adventure games doesn't make sense. If you didn't notice, the vast majority of adventure games are comedies. Pretty much all Sierra titles and LucasArts games, even Secret of Monkey Island that you've praised so much.
Damn, that's right. Why did it never cross my mind that the light-hearted tone just doesn't fit with the inherently difficult puzzle-solving gameplay? I literally spent 2 hours talking about Monkey Island and I didn't question it.
Well, it's because it does fit in with the puzzle solving, George. I don't get your confusion on the matter. In fact, I'm a bit disappointed.
Come on, Seal, don't be like that. If you have an idea about what it's all about, just spill it out. I'll listen.
I know you will, but that is something you should know without me having to spill it out. It's rather basic stuff, George.
Seal, I just don't get it, okay? I know I usually say this right before coming up with an answer or something, but not this time, alright? I simply do not get why it works. I'm sorry if it bothers you, but it's final. But anyway, let's wrap this up. Space Quest 2 is an amazing experience, which I can definitely recommend to any hardcore fan of adventure games. It is a great game. So yeah, let's hope our next game will not provide any of those conundrums that are too much for me to comprehend.
Let's hope so, George. Let's hope so.
It would be naive to expect two 40-year-old games in a row to be so exceptional.
Now, wasn't that embarrassing? To at least somehow redeem myself after that display, I shall now recommend you a great YouTube channel by the name of Adventure Game Geek. He makes excellent, funny and thorough adventure game reviews, which I strongly recommend for your viewing pleasure. For example, check out his two wonderful videos on the original King's Quest for an alternative take to my own.
Hello there, fellow adventurers.
Oh, and here are some outtakes, just for the hell of it.
That's no excuse for blasphemy. How dare you say such things about a timeless classic? I just spit there. You see how angry he got me? I'm spitting. That's no excuse for blasphemy. How dare you say such things? That's no excuse for blasphemy. How dare you say such things about a timeless classic?